Welcome to the Roots and Branches Garden Tour fundraiser. I'm Jenny Conley. I'm the executive assistant with Roots and Branches. Roots and Branches is a privately funded nonprofit that positively impacts all those that all live, work, and visit West Bend. We improve the natural environment by our cleanup, our planting and maintaining gardens, free educational seminars, and our Arbor Day school program. We also recognize those that improve their properties and encourage all to be better stewards of the environment in the community. I'd like to turn the event over to our chairs, Tom Fotenhauer, Debbie Curring, and Marion Rothke.
Thank you, Jenny, for your nice introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to be taking you on a little tour of our gardens today. In just a little while, we'll meet the homeowners and view their gardens. All right, welcome to the Garden Tour 2018. We are here at Bob and Lori Presby, their wonderful garden. This is Lori, and this is Bob.
Hi.
Thank you very much for hosting your garden. As we walk around, I'd like you to show us some of the highlights and tell me what really interests you in your garden.
Well, Lori's really the inspiration and the drive behind what we've got here. We started really from a blank slate. There was very few plants and flowers here, and there was a very small vegetable garden. So as you'll see as we're walking around, things have changed quite a bit. But Lori, if you want to...
Well, I was raised on a farm, and so my interest has always been in plants because we were raised on an organic truck farm or vegetable and fruit farm, but we never got to raise any ornamentals. So the first thing I did was learn all about the ornamentals, and that is displayed here in the front of the garden. I have done, how many? Probably about 7 houses now I've done the landscaping on. So this is just a front yard, which is just specifically for show.
So you have a lot of practice after 7 houses, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Well,
And she did it all on her own at first. I mean, I've just become recently really interested in it over the last several years. So
Yeah.
now I love it.
so you caught the gardening bug as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's wander around and look at some of the highlights.
Okay, this is an example of our garden art, and this is actually rebar that's actually bent into different positions, and you'll see different examples as you walk through the yard. We've
And the
got
cool thing about this is you can lift up your pots and carry them around. This is the eating and cooking patio. Also out here we have some food production, which is one of the goals of the garden. We have newly planted strawberries. Our old strawberries had gotten quite small and difficult to pick. I also have some basil that I grow to make pesto. We make many pints of pesto that we use for quick dinners during the winter.
I see you have raised beds. Do you have some challenges with bunnies or any kind of wildlife?
Yes, we do. The raised beds don't keep the bunnies or the squirrels out. Unfortunately, there was quite a bit of damage done by the squirrels this spring in the new strawberries before they had set real good roots. But otherwise, the raised beds are so that we can do square foot gardening and you can garden more intensely.
And I see you have a butterfly bush, couple butterfly
Yes,
bushes.
we have 3 here and we have got a couple more down there. And they're not in bloom yet, but once they get in bloom, they just attract
Really
tons
attract
and tons
them?
of.
Good for
starting
you.
to see a few monarchs.
Yep.
Good for you.
Yes.
We can help the monarchs any way we can.
Yeah. Another shrub that everybody's interested in is the Quickfire hardy hydrangea, and that's a really interesting shrub because what it does is it gradually turns pink, and then it stays effective and pink all the way until frost. That's one that we're getting a lot of questions on.
I think a few of the homeowners on this tour have that exact tree bush.
Yep. It has so much effect for such a long period of time. Yeah. This is my favorite place in the yard. Whether we're hanging clothes up, which is behind us, or working in the garden, this is a nice place to sit and just relax. I will sit here and do peas or work on beans. It's just a nice area. This is our vegetable garden. One of the goals that we have is to produce most of the vegetables that we eat throughout the year. We use a system called square foot gardening. We have the elevated beds. Initially, probably 12 years ago, we started with wooden elevated beds, but they rotted out pretty quickly. So we've replaced them with pavers. And the soil within the beds is a soilless mixture, actually. So it's a combination of compost, We used Core, which is a coconut product because it's more environmentally friendly, and then some vermiculite to keep the soil nice and loose. We also produce a lot of berries, which are along the front of the garden. We have 2 different types of raspberries in addition to the strawberries.
Now we're on the side of your house, and you have a peculiar looking character here on the ground. Looks to be like a caterpillar. Did you make this or did you find this?
I actually made this, and it's just made out of old bowling balls and some jewels that I picked up. I do artwork, so this is sort of an extension. And we're interested in adding more art into the garden. So we've also got some metal artwork that my brother does, and the spiders, which I love, but apparently other people don't.
Yeah. Those kind of spiders I'll take.
All right, this is another area where we've incorporated some art. One of the problems we have is we have really big overhangs, and so there's large areas up against the house that we can't plant anything. So we discovered these little glass mushrooms. They're very simple to make out of cut glass bowls and some vases. Another piece of artwork from my brother, which is the little toad here. But the mushrooms are pretty much placed all over the garden.
Hello again. I'm here at the house of Pam and Tim Newman. They are number 3 stop on our tour, and we have a wonderfully warm day. Hopefully it stays that way. We can find some shade. We're actually finding the best shade around right now.
Very true. The birch tree here is a lovely shady item in our yard here and in the front. It's a great, one of the original trees on our property here. This area of my yard is very shady, so I've planted impatiens here with the coleus, and one of the things I like to use throughout my garden is cocoa beans to keep the weeds out. It's a great inexpensive way to make sure that the ground stays moist, as well as keeping some of the weeds down a little bit. So it's a great tool as a gardener, and it smells lovely when you lay them down fresh. This is our porch area here where we get obviously very little sun, so the coleus is a great tool to add some color without having to worry about too much sun. And we love to sit here in the mornings because the sun just starts rising and it brings it in to the porch, and it's a great area to rest because it's cool. Debbie, the hit of the tour and the #1 question in my yard is this flower right here, which is a dianthus green ball. And everyone agrees that it looks like a flower that Dr. Seuss would come up with in one of his movies and books. So it is a fun flower that's fuzzy.
Yeah, it looks very nice. I see you have some plants that look like they're for the butterflies here also, huh?
Actually, the salvia here is the feeding of the hummingbird. We have actually 3 hummingbirds that eat every day here in the morning and in the late afternoon. So the salvia is a big draw for the hummingbirds. This is the perennial section of my garden, and some of the highlights of this area is the maple here. It's actually a dwarf variegated maple tree, which a lot of people have asked me. It brings a lot of lightness to a lot of the dark green foliage in the garden bed area. Some of the other standouts, we of course do the city flower of the daylily, which is a fan favorite of mine. I also really like the phlox, and the cotton candy phlox here are real neat. It's a little bit different variation, and I like how the toning with the dark solid pink sort of makes it fun. Also, another standout in this garden, in my opinion, is the coneflower, the red coneflower, which is very beautiful and really draws a lot of interest and attention to the yard. Along this area, one of the things that we really tried to create and focus in on our yard is a barrier, and so that it feels like a park-like setting. So the pines and the arborvitae and the blue spruce are some of our standouts in the yard. They are towering over all of the perennials in front, which it really creates a lot of privacy for a city lot, which we're really fortunate to have. Another one of my favorite items in our yard is the smoke bush. This dark, deep color of purple is a theme that I try to carry throughout the entire garden. So I try to find annuals and perennials that will thematically go through my pots and through my other garden beds that exist in my yard. I also am a very big fan of artists and art, so I like to showcase a lot of the art finds that I have along the way in my travels of many art fairs that I enjoy to go to in the summer. So there are some lighted statues and globes in this garden in particular. Okay. So this is another thing that I feel in my garden that I really pay particular attention to and have the most fun, I think, is what I can create every year in my container gardens. So I feel like this is sort of like a microscope of the different flowers and have really a great opportunity to see how colors and how the plant works together with others. So this is an example of some of my unique pottings. I do them all most from scratch. Another thing in our yard that has been really popular is the Japanese maple. We've had a lot of people question us about that, and it is a beautiful tree with a lot of deep color. And behind the Japanese maple is 3 birdhouses, and this year we were fortunate enough to actually have 3 wrens that built homes and had babies in there, which my husband enjoys very much feeding the birds, and this is one of the great benefits when you have birdhouses and bird feed. You do definitely get to see lots of fun birds come to your yard. We have cardinals, robins, finches. We were really fortunate this year to get wrens. We have not ever seen that before, so that's another highlight to our garden. This is our fire pit area, and the best thing about the fire pit is the shade of the maple that we have. It creates a lovely place at the end of the night to rest and relax and have a fire. My children love making s'mores, and we have lots of neighbors and friends that have enjoyed many evenings out here and this lovely fire pit area with the lantern stone. One of the things I love about this, which was not planned, is the moss that grows between all the lantern stone. It's such a beautiful color, and it just all happened organically and naturally.
I absolutely love relaxing out here. In fact, oftentimes my wife will have to wake me up because at the end of the night I'll get so relaxed that I'll actually fall asleep on one of the chairs.
Pam and Tim even included a art demonstration in their garden today. It's a lovely paintings, lovely note cards.
Shirley Johnson and I, who is the artist here, we met on the tennis courts. We're avid foes on the court, but good friends here in my yard. Good friends in the yard.
I'll forgive you for that
That's
backhand.
that's right. We have lots of fun out there, and she does this amazing art that is very botanical based. So I thought that it was such a great addition, and she has done some amazing demonstrations, and it's fun to see how art is created. And Shirley is a pro at that.
Wow, thank you. I don't know if I'm a pro, but what I am demonstrating this morning is alcohol ink. So it's alcohol-based pigments, and the colors are so vibrant. Let me just, Pam, why don't you hold up a couple pieces, and as you can see in the front of the table too, the colors are vibrant, and you can get them as, as colorful as you want. You can water, or you can add alcohol to them to get them lighter in color, and they're organic, as she said. They spread. You work basically on non-porous surfaces like tiles and plastic paper. It's just been a joy to work with, and so I call myself Joyful Blending.
I'd like to comment on this new garden that my wife Pam put together. This is in honor of our late son Bradley Newman, and when we rest outside on the patio, we think of him and we think of his life, and reminds us of so many nice times with our son.
All right, well, thank you, Tim, for that touching story that you just told us. I'd like to thank you guys for being on the tour. You have a wonderful entrance here, wonderful pots here in this beautiful home that you have. Do you have a few last-minute words, Pam, you'd like to say?
Well, thank you very much to Roots and Branches. We've had a wonderful experience on the garden tour. I've met so many new people, and it's actually been a joy to meet others that have the same interests in me and all the stories that I've learned over the last 2 days.
Thank you again. All right, we're at the home of Barb and Carrie Wolf. They are number 4 on the stop of this year's tour.
I guess we'll start right here because we've had a lot of comments on the vine that's on the house. It was put there originally 7 years ago, and it's really kind of taken off. So I don't notice it anymore, but as you can see, it's really grown well. So this was the first hill we started on, and it's all clay. It was quite a challenge, and it's gotten easier since then.
I do more of the groupings in the planters. This is a new one that I've tried, is the potato vine Ace of Spades, and found that those do really well in sun or shade.
Barb's been telling me she's had a little dilemma with her spiderwort. She's not quite sure when the proper time of blooming is. You want to tell the viewers?
I think it opens up in the morning, and like right now in the afternoon here, it's closed again. It might open up later on the evening. I'm not sure if it likes a lot of water, shade, sun. It's kind of a challenge, this one. We do have it in a couple areas, and all kind of works the same. Closes up and opens.
So we're in a gazebo that actually we don't get much time to relax because we're busy in the yard, but we enjoy that also. Um, it's a nice spot though, and has some shade-loving plants, and it's kind of a neat background feature. Yeah, a lot of comments have been made about the stone around the house. A lot of the large stone we had originally done by the landscaper, but the steps in the wall here I did, and it just kind of works into the contour of the land and as a retaining wall, and obviously a nice place to put even more plants. Okay, a lot of comments on the clematis, which quite frankly, we don't have a whole lot of say about when it blooms and when it doesn't, but it picked a great time to bloom. And this is probably one of my favorite little gardens, probably because it's little and more manageable. And Barb's been busy with baskets and such, so it works out good. It's a team effort.
Here I am again with Barb and Carrie under their pergola on their beautiful patio. Nice view of all Barb's hanging baskets here. I imagine they get a lot of wildlife maybe back there in the green area. And I can hear the pond over in that direction. We'll give you a glimpse of that too in a little while. Do you guys have problems with wildlife here, deer?
A little bit with the deer and the house does typical stuff, but you're in the country and that's the way it is. So, you know, we sometimes treat it, but it's really no big deal. Another kind of neat corner here is a little pond I put in initially, and it's been a challenge. Ponds take some maintenance and some work. So you probably can't see, but there's netting on it to keep out. We had a mink up here, there's raccoons, and certain kind of birds will get at the fish, but we've had no problems. And it's, again, just kind of a peaceful corner with the water feature, and I really like it, even though it's a fair amount of work.
All right, we're going to wrap up with Barb and Carrie. I want to thank them so much for hosting their garden. It's truly beautiful, and we had a beautiful day so far. So do you have anything to say to the folks?
Well, I found it very rewarding. I love being outside, especially during the summer, and just all the new plants that we've come across. We had a couple challenges on the side there with daisies and stuff, but otherwise we're real happy how everything turned out in our garden.
Yeah, same here. Anything worthwhile takes some effort, and this was no less than that. But met a lot of nice people, a lot of knowledgeable people, much more so than us, and it was truly a very nice experience. Glad to share.
Hello again. Now I'm at the house of Ray Pinter. He has a beautiful garden, needless to say, and he's very interested in trying to attract nature, such as the monarch butterfly. You'll see various kinds of milkweed throughout his property. I'm going to give him the mic right now.
Hello. Well, I can hear a bluebird in the background right now.
Can you?
Yeah. But this bed right here is a fairly new bed I just put in last year, or this spring actually, except for the bee balm that was here. But there was a huge spruce that was diseased that was taken out here. And it kind of shaded this purple smoke tree, so it's not looking real good on this side, but it'll fill in eventually. And we have some native plants in here. This is St. John's wort, which is loaded with bees right now. I don't know if you can see them in here, but they seem to like all these stamens on the flowers. And there's Mexican sunflower is the tall plant here, which is an annual, which I actually started from seed in the house this year in the late winter. It grew that tall in, just a couple months. Okay, is that it?
For being such a young garden, this is, in 1 year time, this has really grown into a magnificent. That patch of bee balm is magnificent. What do you have here, Ray? Coreopsis too? That's...
Yeah, Coreopsis and the cat's meow cat mint, which is a catmint that doesn't flop over too much. It stays together real well. You probably can't see it too well with this. This is a native licorice root in the front here, or anise root, which I actually didn't plant. It was, I don't know if the seeds just blew in here, but it was in the shade of the spruce tree at one time, and it's really taken off. But it's beautiful white flowers in the spring. It's kind of fading out now in the summer and the heat of the day. But
Okay, and over here, there's a lot of daylilies, and here's some of the common milkweed. Ray tells me that he's had a lot of monarchs today. He has swamp milkweed and butterfly weed, which we will check that out when we get closer to the pond.
yeah, I have actually 4 types of milkweed: the swamp, the common, the butterfly milkweed, and the world milkweed, which today in the butterfly garden there is a caterpillar on one of the world milkweeds.
Very cool.
But we've seen several monarchs today, probably half a dozen at least. Also many fritillaries today hanging around the butterfly garden mostly. Okay, this is the butterfly milk, or this is the common milkweed, which I just kind of let grow. It seeds, or it comes back every year pretty much, and I don't take it out because the monarchs use this as their host plant, one of the milkweeds for their host plant. But this, I wanted to show this is a pretty nice stand of balloon flower, which the first one just opened today. It's a little later blooming plant, but you can see it looks like a hot air balloon, the bud before it opens. This is one that they previously nested in. They just fledged maybe 3 days ago. And I'm going to leave the nest because they may come back for another nesting. This is a clean nest, so this one is made out of pine needles, which normally they just use grass, but if there's pine trees nearby, and this one was started late in the year, so there wasn't much dry grass available, they use the pine needles. I have a little pine grove in back of us here. And the protection on the box is stovepipe baffle for the raccoons, keep the raccoons from climbing the post. They'll reach right in and either get the eggs or the chicks. So if you have a bluebird box, you got to protect it because there's all kinds of predators that want to get the eggs and the chicks. Well, this is my water feature. It's approximately a 1,500 gallon pond with a 4-tier waterfall coming down the hill. I built this in 2004, all hand dug. Took me like 3 months. And a lot of people think water gardens are a lot of work, you know, a lot of maintenance with the algae and everything. I really don't do much of anything to this. Once it's mature and you get the growth of the plants, they really help filter out the water themselves. And my stream is very clear. It's all recirculating water. There's a pump in the chamber at the end of the pond, pumps it up the hill, 3,000 gallons per hour pump. And I have fish in it. Attracts a lot of bird life, a lot of frogs, toads. There are some predators that are attracted to the fish. I get great blue herons that prey on the fish in the spring, and also raccoons. I had a mink come in once under the ice and got all the fish in the winter. But I don't use expensive fish. I just get the feeder goldfish, and they grow pretty big in 1 year. So I try to get along with the animals, and even though they do some damage sometimes. This is another new bed I created just last year, so it's gradually filling in. There was another huge spruce here that was taken out. It was diseased. So I have a bottle brush buckeye in here, which will get maybe at least 3 times that size. It'll fill out this whole area. It gets the white blooms that look like long bottle brushes, maybe a foot long. You can see it's budding out right now. And then again, I'm going with a lot of natives in here. This is, well, there goes a fritillary butterfly. But these are northern dropseed, all this grass in the front. And this is butterfly milkweed, another type of milkweed, which yesterday on the garden tour, there was a monarch camped on it all day, from 8 in the morning till 3. Right when the tour was over, he decided to leave, so he was kind of helping me host it. And this is a sculpture of, it's really driftwood, but it looks like some kind of prehistoric bird, which I found up north on our property. I drifted into shore. Well, since my garden is actually on Glacier Drive and Kettle Moraine Scenic Drive, I wanted to do something for the garden tour to kind of commemorate that, and I created this mammoth. not really life-size, but it's maybe a juvenile. It's probably 8 foot tall. I built it in my garage over the winter out of plywood, and it's just a fun thing. He's grazing on some grasses. They were herbivores, and they ate like, I don't know how many tons of grass a day, but it just was a fun thing to do for the garden tour and the Ice Age Trail. Okay, the Japanese beetles have been a real problem in my yard the last couple of years, and they devastated my birch trees last year. The leaves were dropping like it was fall and summer, but anyway, I don't spray for almost anything in the garden. It's pretty organic, and I hand pick them. So this is my raspberry patch. They seem to love raspberry plants too. You can see all the holes in the leaves. They're just shredding it, but they're in here. There's two together. You just grab them. Well, I miss these. You can just shake them off and get them into a pail of soapy water. There's tons of them in here that I've collected over the last couple days. They're just kind of coming out now in force. They start around July 4th, and by the end of July, hopefully, it won't be as bad as last year, but last year they were just covering everything. This is my butterfly garden, which I created about, I think maybe 3 years ago. It was an old asparagus bed, which I enlarged and been gradually filling it in over the last 3 years. Every year I add more, but it's mostly native. I'd say 85 to 90% native plants, which attract, I think I've had 12 different species of butterfly, including the giant swallowtail, which is probably the most prevalent butterfly in the butterfly garden. And of course I get monarchs, and there's a monarch caterpillar in here right now on the world milkweed. Another.
Do you plant certain plants that attract?
Yeah, there's you need plants for both the nectar source where they get their food from, but also the host plant where monarchs can only lay their eggs on milkweed, the milkweed family plants. It's a requirement of theirs, and they take up the toxins in the milkweed, which make them poisonous to birds and other predators. Although when they're young, the birds will still get them because they don't have enough toxins built up when the caterpillars are real small. But it's not at peak yet. In another 2 weeks, it'll probably be at peak color. I have a lot of purple coneflowers just opening up, the native yellow coneflower, Joe Pye weed, Laetris. The daisies, of course, are not native. It gives me a little more color earlier in the year, though. This is the monarch caterpillar on world milkweed. It's a really small plant, but he's chomping away in there, and he's probably in at least the second stage, I would say. He's getting bigger.
Well, I want to thank Ray Pinter for hosting his garden in the garden tour this year, and we've had many surprises here today. We've seen monarchs, we've seen bluebirds, and by golly, we even saw a woolly mammoth on the tour. You'll never know what you're going to see when you come to a Roots and Branches garden tour. Well, I'd like to thank Ray Pinter for hosting his garden in this year's garden tour. We've had all kinds of surprises here today. We were lucky enough to see a bluebird nest. I actually saw the bluebird. We saw monarchs, and he claims there were caterpillars somewhere. I did not ask him to see that. And then, by all things, who would think you'd see a woolly mammoth at a garden tour? But when you come to Roots and Branches garden tour, you never know what you're going to see. Thank you so much, Ray. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming out and enjoying the garden, and it's been a lot of fun hosting.
Well, I'm now at Margaret Dahlman and Joe Holt's house. They are number 6 on our garden tour. And I'm going to ask you two to tour us around your yard and show us some of the highlights, favorite plants, etc. You know, most of the times on a garden tour, there's 1 or 2 plants that are asked about the most. So if you come across those, please don't hesitate. So Margaret, would you like to take over?
Oh, sure.
We'll walk this way.
Okay, so in the front of the house is really our sun garden. So we spend most of the plants in the front take a lot of sun. So we have the coneflowers, which are, you know, a focal point at this time of the year, earlier in spring. We have the lupine, which is very nice, and quite a few iris varieties. which are really beautiful. So that's probably the biggest highlights in the front of the yard. Throughout the back, we have a shade garden. So
Where are your coneflowers?
the coneflowers are right in the middle here. So they're just starting to bloom right now, the purple coneflowers. You can see some of them just starting to bloom. They're quite tall, so they'll reach above the grasses here, and you'll be able to see them all, but they're quite lovely. Okay, so in the backyard, we have a few focal points that have been really highlights on the tour as well, which are the large hostas that we have. So the big blue and the Sum and Substance, which have been very popular. And then we have about 15 different varieties of begonias as well. The most popular begonia has been the Escargot Begonia, which is a Rex Begonia, and that's been quite popular as well. It looks really like a snail, so everyone likes that, and that's been quite popular. We have a fire pit in which we use quite a bit in fall, and there are wild trillium that comes up in spring. We like that. That's quite nice. And we have a shag bark hickory that is on the edge of the fire pit that we use sort of as the anchor at that part of the yard. So the Escargot Begonia is the one right behind me here, and it has excellent foliage on it. It gets tiny white flowers underneath the leaves, but it does not, those aren't really all that important. It's really the swirliness of the leaf and the foliage that people like the most out of that. And I get those every year at growths in Cedarburg, so it's a very popular begonia and has been on this tour. I also get the Pegasus Rex Begonia, which is off to my right here, and this is quite a large begonia which will double again in size by the end of the summer, and that's a nice variety, and that one does not bloom, but it's also a great piece.
Wow, do you try to overwinter any of those begonias, Margaret?
I do try. The smaller begonias I have better luck with bringing inside. Some of these larger varieties I do not do very well wintering.
So this begonia back here is just one season's growth?
Yes.
Wow.
It is. It
very good.
Very large.
Okay. We'll travel on to another part of your yard. I see you have a lot of little knickknacks and a lot of little bird houses. We'll try to capture that in a minute.
Okay. So behind us we have our patio, which is underneath our sunroom, and we spend quite a bit of time in the evening and on the weekends out in the patio. It's nice because if it rains, it's covered, so we can stay out here under most conditions. We have a heater there as well, so if it's a little chilly, it's nice in fall and spring, even if it gets a little bit too cold. But we really enjoy wine, so it's a perfect place for us to sit out and have a glass of wine on an evening, and we have a lot of family over and friends and really enjoy it out on the patio. It's a nice place. And then in fall, we also enjoy the fire pit and making a fire and just enjoying the different colors at that time of year with the woods behind us. So we've really expanded our begonia selection this year for the garden tour, and we've added quite a few different varieties. So behind me on the stairs we have just a few different pots which include the wild pony variety of begonia. We have the partita as well as the carolifolia, which are very nice, beautiful different options. Now those I will overwinter and bring out next year, and I expect that they'll just continue to get bigger and bigger. So those are quite lovely. I'll probably continue to keep them in pots so that I can showcase them a little bit better versus putting them in the ground.
Well, thank you for all that information, Margaret. And I want to thank Joe and Margaret for hosting their gardens. It's been a pleasure, and this is definitely a lot about shade here. So she knows all about it with her begonias and overwintering, and it's a beautiful, peaceful setting. And I imagine she deals with some wildlife, deer and the such.
We do. We have quite a lot of deer and rabbits, and we have to spray pretty continuously to keep them from eating just about everything in our garden.
Okay, is there anything else you might want to say to the fine folks out there?
Well, anybody's welcome at any time to come
Oh,
over and enjoy
that
it.
sounded like an open invitation. Really not, probably. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Hello, we are on the last stop of the Roots and Branches garden tour. We're out in the country by Kathy and Dave Boyd's house. They have a beautiful country property, many things to see here. I believe her garden is geared more towards the Japanese look, but we will let Kathy fill you in on that. And these are my favorite plants right here. Kathy will tell you what they are. I've already ran out to try to buy one. And Kathy, here's some interesting thing going on with this bark on this tree. Maybe you can elaborate.
Thank you, Debbie. This was one of the first installations, I think, on the property. Somewhere I read in a Japanese gardening book that you should welcome the tortured homeowner back with a woodland and, a warm plant-laden environment. So we bermed up slightly, and we're looking here at Hakone Grass, which is ever lovely in its three forms, the gold, the variegated, and the green. And rising from it is a paperbark maple, or an Acer griseum. And here we have another Japanese maple. They are scattered throughout the property. I think there's only 2 of them that are in the more compact or dwarf form. And this one's been happily here for something like 25, 30 years, lending grandeur to the space. Quite a few people commented on the Japanese maple behind me. I'm not sure why, but it is the one that has the most brilliant color at this time of year, so it was quite a standout. There's many Japanese maples on the property, and they all seem to react differently to either the light or the situation. So this one was especially brilliant, and it garnered its share of attention. Well, the glass balls I put on copper pipes just for a little bling to see how much I could tolerate. It's an experiment in progress. The area behind me is carpeted with European ginger. It's purposefully left as a very restful place, let's say, with an absence of other distracting plant material. There's some Japanese maples that form an understory under the pines, and it's a quiet, almost, let's say, zen-y place. The shade garden next to us, we've eliminated some of the pines that felt were too close and put some cairns on top of the stumps to just serve as markers for them. This area was originally a play set and a sandbox when the children were young. And as time passes, gardening needs change. And the pergola was put in, the ponds were dug out, and a bridge constructed between them to hopefully make it seem as if they were a larger body of water. But it's another one of the places that we enjoy very much, sitting and looking back at the fruits of our labors.
Well, here I am with Kathy, and I asked her about this interesting little structure here with a little pine of some sort in it. And if she stops laughing, she's going to tell me all about it.
It was a surprise to me that Deb picked one of the smallest plants on the property. But this is a lacebark pine, a bungiana, and in 10 years it will have exfoliating bark and truly be a standout. But it's something you plant for tomorrow or the years to come because it's quite a slow grower, but very worthy. So we're looking forward to this. We had one on the property earlier. I tried to move it and killed it. So this is our second attempt at this excellent pine.
Wonderful. I see you have some honeysuckle and trumpet vine here on your arbor. I imagine when they're blooming you get a lot of hummingbirds, do you?
We do, and we used to cover the pergolas, I'm sorry, Deb, we used to cover them with grapevines, this and the other seating area, but wasps were an issue and kept us from enjoying them, and this seems like a happier solution.
Oh, it certainly looks good with your lanterns back there. I bet at night this is a wonderful place.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Hello.
Oh.
Now I'm with Kathy and Dave, and we are in the really cool part of the yard. As I said before, it's more Japanese-like, and there's a story behind this paved walkway that Kathy will fill us in. It's supposed to resemble a snake. And again, here's a tree with no leaves. I'm not quite sure the story behind that, but it looks marvelous. So I will hand it over to Kathy.
This area was originally mown and grass, and looking from the second floor of the house, it seemed like a gardener should be able to do better. So we traced a pattern of, as Deb said, the snake back path, which has an arch in it and makes drainage much more convenient. Ran the stream through it and filled it with Japanese maples under the shelter of pines. I think it's a beautiful transition. It's worked very well for us. All right, this stream that we mentioned along the side of the house feeds into this concrete pond. It was the first pond we built when the kids were infants. They used to swim in here and think it quite large. As you can see, it's not. But it's very happily survived the freezing and thawing of Wisconsin winters. And having a concrete truck pull up our front yard was hysterical to all involved. He said he felt like he was dribbling it out with a teaspoon to leave us enough to make the pond, but it's a happy sight in our front yard.
Well, here we are, another wonderful year of garden tours. I hope everybody's enjoyed the tour. The weather held out. It was wonderful, a little hot, but needless to say, when you're a gardener, that's what you get. So I'd like to know if Kathy has anything to say about the tour. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors and our wonderful volunteers that we've had, and of course, all our homeowners, along with Dave and Kathy Boyd. Kathy, would you like to say something to the folks?
Yes, I would. I'd like to thank Roots and Branches for making it all possible. It's been a wonderful experience for both of us to share our property with so many people who were so kind and had wonderful, warm comments, and I'm very happy about that. Both of us are. I'd also like to encourage young people to join into the gardening world because, well, it was certainly work getting the grounds ready for the show. Gardening is easy and so enjoyable, and we should all be more in touch with the world of nature. And that's my goal for the future, is to strive to be more of a natural gardener that creates the spaces that we all need to find more time to be in. So thank you very much, Debbie.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm sure Dave and Kathy are going to probably relax right here on their rocking chairs and have a cold beverage. I know that's what I'm going to do. Thanks again, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.